Hello, I hope you're doing well today. Thanks for joining me, John Glyn Hughes, once again in the next and final instalment of the videos that I've been posting on YouTube in support of my latest book. It is my first fictional novel and it is entitled Sailing Towards the End of the World. The book comes in paperback and hardback formats. It's available from Amazon and other good bookshops, or if you'd like to get yourself fixed up with a personalised signed copy, just give me a shout out on my email address and I'd be delighted to facilitate that. Okay, so for the final time, there is the book itself. That's the paperback version. Front cover and the back cover. An epic supernatural adventure story set in the 17th century. The book features up to 30 hand-drawn and graphically enhanced illustrations inside, which accompanies the text. So on average, it's about one illustration per chapter. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago I decided that the theme for this video would be that I would reach out to those who had purchased the book and ask for any questions that readers might have which they'd like clarified from me, because at the end of the day, as far as I'm concerned, the most important part of this whole process is the reader, because it's not about me, it's about the people that the book touches and connects with. So upon making that request, right up until this afternoon, I have received quite a few questions actually, and in this video I'm going to be looking at each question individually and addressing them the best I can. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into the questions. The first question is, are the characters in the book based upon real people? I would say, generally speaking, the traits of all of the characters are based upon the collective traits I've noticed in a very expansive and eclectic group of people I have either known or know. To be more specific, I would say the only characters in the book based on real people are Elisa and Van Beer's betrothed, Helena. To protect the identities of the innocent, we will not reveal who they are or how the part they have played in my life. But those two characters, if the truth be told, are based upon real people. The others, not so much. They are more based upon common traits that are identifiable through a large grouping of peoples I know or have known. Okay, so question 2. Can you relate to Palmer in any way? I can relate to Palmer in several ways. I would say that our personas are quite different. A persona is a Latin word which means mask, and in the parlance of psychology or psychotherapeutics, the persona could be relatable as the mask or the projection that we wear in public to induce those that we interact with to take us as we want to appear to be. I would say our personas are similar in some respects, different in others. I would say that I'm more optimistic and gregarious and outgoing perhaps in Palmer, although I would say Palmer is extremely conscientious, as am I. However, he is not open. I would say that I'm very high on openness and conscientiousness, whereas Palmer is only going to be like me in so much as he's very high in conscientiousness. That said, I can relate more to the shadow side of Palmer. I get that part of him. I think I'd said before in one of the videos, you really have to walk a mile in the shoes of the main characters, or even most of the characters in your books when you're an author. I did walk in Palmer's shoes, so I guess I had to feel a bit of his pain to be able to write about it, to convey it to you, the reader, in a way that was convincing. So I would say the shadow aspects of me and Palmer are more alike than the persona. I hope that makes sense. Question number 3. Are any of the events in the book based upon real events that have happened to you? Yes. There are several examples that I could cite on this video. The one I choose to cite is in 2005 I cheated death. Circumstance, fate, consequence, call it whatever you want to call it, because of a person in my life who interjected at a crucial time. I honestly believe I cheated death. Therefore, that's why the section with Palmer and the expedition that he's leading in the Alps kind of really resonated with me, whereas when he survives, he looks back at the carnage and those who were not as fortunate and realises from this point on anything more is extra, and I can really relate to that. And actually, in that happening to me, that that enabled me to live a better life, I would say. Okay, moving on swiftly to the next question. I thought the erotic section was well written and in some way not sordid. However, someone else I know read it and was disappointed in you. Any thoughts? Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment, and I'm saddened if I did disappoint anyone. But at the same time, I think as a creative artist, you need to be willing to push the boundaries of what you're doing. I'd never attempted anything like that before. And I am of the opinion that if you keep doing the same thing that you always did, you'll keep getting the same results that you always got. I think in being willing to take on challenging topics, let's just say content, to be able to express yourself in a creative way, you need to be willing to accept the responsibility for potentially upsetting someone. I know I did talk about this topic extensively in video 2 in the series, but I think that's all I can say on that, really. I wasn't attempting to be sordid, so I'm glad the querent didn't find it sordid and considered it well written, because at the end of the day, sex and sexuality is a part of life. I've addressed everything in between: self-harming, suicide, post-traumatic stress, death, love. Why would love making be taboo when it's a normal part of everyday life? And I get that some people don't want to read about it, might find it embarrassing in its written form. However, as I said, sometimes as a means of creative expression, you need to be willing to potentially upset or offend someone. And I think that's all I can say to that really. Some people are going to like it, some people aren't going to like it. But I certainly don't want to be seen as sordid or sleazy, because anyone who knows me knows that's absolutely not the case. Right, so next question then. I was intrigued by the evil spirit trapped in the bottle and wore as a necklace. Where did you get that idea? Hanoi Orangi is the jinn, the invisible malevolent spirit trapped within the bottle. I've always been attracted to supernatural type themes. I think I've discussed that in video 9. I'm interested in folklore, and I've been aware of jinns in folklore. And this isn't only, European folklore. Jinns feature in Arabic pre-Islamic folklore, so it's certainly not a new concept. Although I guess trapping one in a bottle is something else. I guess as a child I liked the story of Aladdin, and the fact that the genie, which could grant you your desires, your 3 wishes, resided in a lamp, and it was up to the lucky person that found the magic lamp to rub the lamp to release the genie. Well, this is kind of in reverse. This, I guess you could look upon the jinn as a evil, malevolent genie that if it gets out, it's going to wreak havoc and target you for malicious means. So I kind of flipped the idea of the magic lamp in Aladdin on its head. So instead of having a spiritual entity which can grant you wishes held within a lamp that you release by rubbing a lamp, it was more like constricting the pressure of being the custodian of an evil spirit that you must never allow to escape from the glass bottle. So it's a kind of 180 on the genie, the magical genie story. So I guess that's where the inspiration came from, that. And the next question is a kind of follow-on, because another question that I received from a different reader was, the cannibals opened a Camus bottle. Did the jinn Hanoi Orangi somehow bring about his demise? Well, what I'm going to do with that question is I'm going to leave that entirely up to interpretation of you, the reader. I don't want to. Sometimes it's good to have questions that can't be answered as opposed to answers that can't be questioned. And with that little tongue twister, I'm going to leave the interpretation of that up to you. And for the next question, Van Beer became very close to Palmer in the end, but at no point did he disclose his own heartbreak. Why? He didn't disclose his own heartbreak to Palmer because a hero worships Palmer, and Palmer's opinion of him mattered very much to him. He didn't want to be seen as weak. I guess the fact that in some way he ended up providing counselling for Palmer elevated him in his own mind with his regard to Palmer. Van Beer's got a bit of a radical personality. He never felt the need to outwardly express the angst of his own sadness and grief at the devastating loss of his betrothed Helena. I think that's how I'll answer that question. Okay, here we have a question. Was the ending literal, or rather a drug-induced hallucination on Palmer's part? That is an excellent question, and it falls into the same category as did Hanoi Orangi bring about a Camus demise. I will say again, sometimes it's good to have questions that can't be answered as opposed to answers that can't be questioned. It's up to you, the reader, to interpret it in the way which you want to interpret it. Did you handwrite the book, or was it typed electronically? My handwriting now is absolutely appalling. So the book was typed electronically. I'm actually quite effective at typing, fast and accurate, whereas my handwriting is absolutely appalling. So in answer to that question, the book was typed via electronic means on my laptop and with some software which assisted, and that's the way I like to work because it looks neat. It can be easily interchanged and adapted. How long did the book take to write? The book took in the region of 2 years to write, and for me, that is a long time. It's a long process for me. For example, the first book that I published, which was entitled Help Yourself, took in the region of 3 to 4 months. The second book, This Dream Reality, likewise. And my latest self-help book, Peaks and Troughs, that took between 6 and 8 weeks. But this book took an awful lot longer, and I really wanted to pour it on in this book and just take the brakes off and go for it. It had to be right. I wanted this book to be something I could be really proud of, and I am happy with the way it turned out, and that goes for the illustrations and the story, the content, the covers, the whole thing. So in answer to that question, it was about 2 years, which probably equates to many thousands of hours. Okay, so the next question then, how long has the story been in your head? Well, I think I did mention in the introduction inside the sleeve that the story I felt had been with me for as long as I can remember, and that was an honest admission, because it is actually very difficult for me to actually pin down a time when the story wasn't in my head. That's not to say that all of the details and the characters and the twists and turns existed in that way, but the general story, I can't remember a time when the story wasn't with me. So the process of formulating the book was all about getting the story down and then developing it. I looked upon the empty pages as an art sculptor. For me, the process of writing the story down was like carving the story out of the blank page. So the basis of the story has been with me for as long as I can remember. Why is beyond my explanation. It's just the way it is. Right, so the next question. Is the sea monster within Palmer himself? That is, in his mind, due to his opiated and reckless past. Therefore, is he projecting it in his present around him? On this question, I would say that is a good potentiality. However, that's not the case. The beast is physically manifest in the environment as it collides head on with the expedition, and from that point on, the beast seeks to exploit the communion, let's just say, the meeting of the minds to its own end, which are apparent when you read the book. I would say as well that much is made, or has been made I suppose, about Palmer's capacity for violence. But one thing that I perhaps haven't talked quite as much about in the videos is he has an unbelievable capacity for feeling and caring. He's a very caring person, and this is part of the appeal that the beast has to him, because the beast worships his psychic energy because it's never encountered anything like him. His synergy. It wants a symbiosis, whereas it wants to consume Palmer and satiate itself on his energy. But a part of the appeal for the beast is also the fact that Palmer has a tremendous capacity for feeling and for caring for others. He has a tremendous capacity for feeling devotion and love in its truest form, and that's a bit overlooked, I feel. So I hope that answers that question sufficiently. Okay, next question then. Does the beast manifest as Palmer's self-destructive salvation or retribution? Is it his saviour or his demon? The beast is Palmer's nemesis, and the nemesis is the foe that cannot be defeated, that cannot defeat you, generally speaking. And it's worth noting that Palmer doesn't defeat the Beast, and the Beast doesn't defeat him. So I would coin the Beast as being Palmer's nemesis. And I would also refer to a saying, an old saying of Carl Jung's, when he said, "In filth it will be found." And what that saying means, my interpretation of that meaning is, sometimes when you need to find what you need to find, you need to look where you least want to look. It's like a dragon sitting on a pile of treasure. In order to get and accumulate the treasure yourself, you need to confront and defeat the dragon. And that takes courage and bravery. And bravery and courage, incidentally, isn't the lack of fear. It's more a case of feeling the fear, but doing it anyway. So, in response to the question, the Beast is his nemesis, and it's the place he has to go to enable him to evolve beyond it in finding what he needs to find. Okay, moving on swiftly. I've noticed parallels with your other books. What are the inspiration for the illustrations that feature throughout them all? As a hypnotherapist, I deal mostly, all meaningful change happens on a subconscious or unconscious level. And symbolism, pictures and illustrations can sometimes say more than 1,000 words. Symbols are a direct means of connecting with the querent's unconscious or subconscious mind. And that is why, to put it in a nutshell, in the simplest answer possible, the reason I use illustrations and or graphical inclusions in all of my books is they're there to tweak the unconscious mind of the reader. Why independent publishing? I firmly believe in independent publishing as a means of getting an artist's work into the hands of people who would appreciate it without the impediment of handing over ownership of the creative expression to a corporate entity or group of people who operate on behalf of the corporate entity. By using independent publishing, I retain full creative control down to the finest details of the structure of the book, the content of the book, the covers, in line with my editor, of course. But at the end of the day, as the CEO of my own independent publishing, I retain the freedom to be able to express myself in the way that I want to express myself. I have never approached a large publisher, and neither would I. I have no need of approaching a large publication company, because if it doesn't meet my values, my ethics, and it won't meet my ends. Because my end is not to sell a huge amount of books and make lots of money and become famous, because I'm not interested in that. I already have, even before I pen a single word onto any of my books, I already have what I need. I don't chase more than I have, although I want to become more than I am through development in the healthiest possible way as an artist. Suffice to say, I would rather sell 100 copies on my feet as an independent publisher than sell 100,000 copies with a large corporate entity taking ownership of my creative process. You've obviously done a lot of research for the 17th century, including the language. Would you have liked to have lived during that era, and why were you drawn to write about that era? Actually, I didn't do an awful lot of research for the type of linguistics which were prevalent during that era. So I've always had an affinity for some reason for the linguistics of bygone times, and my readings, although I do like the classics, I wouldn't say my readings have been focused specifically on that. So it's something that's come quite naturally to me. The second part of the question, in answer to that, I would not like to have lived in, because it was such a brutal time in history. And finally, the last question, what are your favourite parts of the book? My favourite parts of the book involve the romanticism of Elisa's relationship with Jonathan, which features in the prequel and also reprises in a latter chapter, the tenet of an unforgiving God. I don't know what it is about it, it just gets me every time. I've read them dozens and dozens of times, and it just gets me every time. I guess I am a romantic at heart. I'd also say the chapter, The Lonely Wasteland of Silent Sorrow, which uncovers Van Beer's love for Helena, gets me as well. In that chapter, I really tried to capture, it's like trying to capture lightning in a bottle, but I tried to capture a very macho, masculine, male perspective on the depth and breadth of adoration you can feel for a woman. It includes the axiom, the maxim, that all love affairs are doomed to end in tragedy because one must die first. And yeah, that I really like those sections, and I also like the section where Van Beer and Palmer end up shipwrecked in the small clinker. I like the camaraderie in that section. Okay, so that concludes the questions, and in doing so it concludes the series on videos that I've posted on YouTube in support of the book. I'd like to give my heartfelt thanks to those who've been so kind as to buy the book and have told me they've enjoyed it, and they've given such positive feedback and said so many kind words and left nice reviews and what have you. At the end of the day, it's always going to be, for me, about you, the reader. It's that vicarious connection that I can make with people, many of whom I will never have the opportunity to meet in any meaningful way in person. So to conclude, thank you for joining me in these videos. Thanks for watching, subscribing, leaving comments, thumbs up and what have you. It's been a fascinating process for me, using video as a means of discussing my written work. It's something I hope to use more in the future. So on that note, I'll say adios, and until the next time, stay awesome, look after yourself, and do your best to always be kind to others.